Today, we reach back in history to revisit the legacy of Detroit's rich musical past with a new book about a song that is better known than the fascinating life of the Detroit musician who created it. Sit back as Kevin and Keith John and Detroit News music journalist Susan Whitehall take you into the world of Little Willie John. It's Sunday, November the 27th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. And the book is Fever, Little Willie John, The Fast Life, Mysterious Death, and the Birth of Soul. And three people that are intimately involved with it are here with us today on Spotlight. Welcome to our studios.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chuck.
I'm going to start with you, Susan. How did you hook up with these guys, so to speak? And you're an experienced music journalist. Why this topic? Why this book? Why this subject? And how did you all meet?
Well, I've always been intrigued with Willie's music. I was a journalist at Cream magazine here in Detroit and loved and heard his stuff for years. And I happened to mention Little Willie John in one of my news stories, and Kevin contacted me and thanked me for talking about him. And then we happened to coincidentally run into each other at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame one time, and we were conversing more, and he said, well, there hasn't been a book on his dad, and what do I think of that? And I thought, gosh, I can't believe no one had done it before. It was such a dramatic story.
But you were familiar with his dad already?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you couldn't help it be. You know, the original version of Fever and...
Which everybody has signed.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a little bit. We'll get to that in a little bit. Yeah.
So, and it's such a great Detroit story. So I got a lot of the interviewing and stuff I can do right here in town. And, you know, you've got all these amazing musicians he influenced them. And it just was such a great untold story that people unjustly forgot.
And this was before Motown, because every
Yes.
time people think about Detroit in music, they're so quick to say, oh, it began with Berry Gordy and Motown, and we have a rich history of music before Motown got its start, right?
Absolutely.
Kevin, you're the co-author on this. You're the son, along with Keith. In the description of the book, it says, it is unjustly, your father was unjustly forgotten. What do you mean by that?
Well, when you think about all the people that he's influenced, as Susan mentioned, we think about Stevie Wonder. We think about people like Jeffrey Osborne. We had a chance to also interview Levi Stubbs, and although they were contemporaries, he was also influenced by him. So when you have someone that influences somebody to this degree, and all you remember is the ones that were influenced, I think that's kind of sad.
How do you think your dad, Keith, had so much influence and he only lived to be 30 years old?
You figure the impact must have been really, you know, he had a certain gift that spoke to, especially singers. It spoke to people, but it spoke to singers. If you were a singer, you couldn't, if it's playing on the radio and it's like something going past you, your head, you're going to be following it like, you know, with your ears. And you say, wow, who is that? Who is that? Because he just had so much emotion. And such a gift.
And
such
he
a
started
raw
so
gift.
young.
Absolutely.
At age 14, he was singing with Count Basie?
Yeah, and see, that's what's so interesting.
Yeah.
He loved music, so he really shouldn't have been, you know, cubbyholed in one little box. He could sing almost anything. He recorded country and western.
Yeah.
He recorded what they would call now soul or R&B. So he loved music.
He did ballads?
He did ballads. He did up-tempo songs. He did all of it.
Elvis heard his song, what was the song?
She Thinks I
I Still Care. He heard that version and loved it, took it home, and he ended up recording it. And people think he recorded it because George Jones did. No, he heard Little Willie John's version. And the Beatles recorded his song, Leave My Kitten Alone, Willie's song.
Little Willie John, whose real name is William Edward John,
Correct.
is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Is there a music tribute that he has not received that perhaps he should receive?
Don't get me started, Chuck.
Go ahead. We got a little bit of time. We got to talk fast.
The Apollo Hall of Fame.
He should be in that.
The Rhythm and Blues Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
That's just for a start. In a lifetime honorary Grammy Award. I mean, for all the people that he's inspired.
He really did help birth the soul music era. I really believe that. That's why it's in our title.
Keith, why do you think your dad has not received those honors yet?
To me, it's a mystery when you think about all of the different people that he influenced, that have influenced, and it's like the the inspiration process, it just continues to just overlap and overlap and overlap. I was having this conversation with Stevie a while back, and he was saying
Stevie Wonder.
with Stevie Wonder. I'm sorry.
I worked with him.
Yeah, I was having this conversation with Stevie Wonder.
Not everybody just says Stevie.
And he was talking about, yeah, I hear your voice when I hear this singer. I hear your voice when I hear this singer. I hear your voice. And to me, it's the big mystery. I would think, you know, you have, these days, you have some people that they get out there and they make a little noise, and then they get all this notoriety. And with him, he not only touched all these different people, but he had great music out there that people still listen to and still can appreciate to this day. And then a lot of those little accolades.
That was a lot of years ago. If your dad were living today, he would be 74 years old. But his prime was in the late 50s into the early 60s.
You know, and
hang on one second.
Go ahead.
Gotta get a commercial break here. I hate to cut you off.
That's okay.
We'll pick up and see what your thought is. And when we come back, we're also going to talk about James Brown.
Okay.
We'll talk about maybe the kind of the dark side of your dad's life that you write about in this book.
Okay.
And anything else we can throw in there.
All righty.
We'll be right back. We hope you stay with us. I cut you off, and I apologize.
Well, no, it's just that we had a conversation, my brother and I, about why my father hadn't been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Levi Stubbs.
At that point.
At that point. And he said, Kevin, be patient. It's going to happen. He looked at me like we're talking right now. He said, you got to understand something. This is nothing to take away from Motown. He said, your father's gone. His record company is gone. There's nobody to push for him. And so he said,
and there's politics involved.
Hey,
right?
You said it, I didn't. So he thought that it was going to happen, and we were so happy when it finally did happen.
But you know, and I have to give credit. Dave Marsh, who's from Detroit, from Pontiac, is one of the guys that helped push it through, and Terry from the
Terry
Rock and Roll Hall of
Stewart,
Fame,
yes,
Terry
absolutely.
Stewart.
Terry Stewart.
So there are a lot of Willie's peers who are not in. So Willie is in. It's a great honor that he is. That's how admired he is by the people at the committee.
Let's talk before time's our worst enemy, James Brown. You write a lot about James Brown and the relationship that your dad had with James Brown. It was what sort of a love-hate sort of relationship. They admired each other, but they rivaled each other.
Well, I think Keith put it best when we were coming into the studio. He said that it was a competition, but they really respected and loved each other. Because James actually opened for my father at the Apollo early in his career, so they really respected each other.
But he tells the story a lot about Keith.
A love, hate, respect, compete. Love, hate, respect, compete.
Well, your dad was a little ahead of James Brown, and James Brown realized that in order to get to the top, he had to sort of beat your dad.
And he'd pull out his trick bag, you know. He was doing all that stuff because he couldn't out-sing Willie. So he would do everything else.
So the dance thing came in there. So, but you can't do this.
Oh, yeah.
He made it more theater.
There you go.
More of a performer. Absolutely.
He tried to out-croon him, but it didn't quite work.
And getting back to the inspiration, you think of all the people that have that James Brown has influenced through his performance, his singing, or
like
whatever.
Michael Jackson.
And then my father was so influential in his life, and he used to open for my dad. So, the inspiration process, you can't say enough about.
In the book, you quote Marvin Gaye, you quote Stevie Wonder, all of them saying great things about your dad. I mean, these are icons in the music industry.
Aretha, too.
And Aretha as well. So these are people who know what talent is.
Oh, absolutely.
And when they say great things, you know that this is not just somebody who really doesn't deserve these accolades.
Absolutely. In fact, some time back, before the book was done, George Benson called me from New Zealand. And he said that the way he approaches
I thought you were just
going
to say George.
I have done that in the past. No, he said the way that he approaches vocals was largely influenced by listening to my dad. He even recorded Let Them Talk, which is one of my father's big hits, from years ago. So there are so many people that we've met. The OJs, the first time my brother and I met the OJs, Eddie Levert comes up to us, he says, "Your father was one of the greatest."
And that brings up, when people read the book, they should really get the music, or go on YouTube and listen while you're reading, because his voice just grips you.
Just grabs.
Now let's talk about. We can't do this without talking about the dark side.
Absolutely.
Your dad only lived to be 30 years old, but he died in prison of a heart attack. and prior to that, he was in prison because of a manslaughter. Tell us a little bit about that and how this played into his life.
The R&B world backstage and all was wild back then, and what should
be. The reason I do that, and I hate to cut you off, is because there'll be somebody out there who will say, "Why are you sitting there doing an interview, making all of this over somebody who committed a heinous crime?"
Because actually, all they write about on the internet is the crime, and we wanted to make it more a balanced portrait and show what he did do, what his music was. But no, I go into that in great detail. In fact, I found the prosecutor who actually prosecuted him. The prosecutor feels that it was unjust, that he didn't have proper representation. It was really self-defense. It was a much larger person who instigated the fight, and then he should have gotten off on self-defense probation or something like that. He didn't. And
he stabbed a man?
Allegedly, yes, but it could have been anyone in the house, the prosecutor says. That's the other defense that should have been mounted. Either it was self-defense or it could have been any of these people.
Yeah, because none of them liked him. He was a bully.
He was an out-of-towner. He was the oddball, Yeah, the guy was a bully who started the fights. He didn't belong there.
In Seattle, Washington?
It was in Seattle at an after-hours party. This guy just happened to be hanging around the stars and the people who were actually invited to this party. And he was insulting the women there, and Willie took up for the woman, and the guy punched Willie, and then supposedly a knife came out, somebody stabbed the guy at some point. But this prosecutor was a fascinating interview because he also feels that something bad happened to him in prison. He shouldn't have died, that it was probably, in his own phrase, death by prison guard. That he probably mouthed off to somebody, wasn't getting proper medical attention. He wrote a letter to his wife, Darlene, in January, and he was in good health. Was
there any indication through your tedious research that race was a factor? I mean, thinking about the time.
Absolutely.
And these were the heights of the civil rights movement and stuff.
And the prosecutor, who's white, he brought that up himself. He didn't feel that it was really a jury of Willie's peers, for one thing, and even though they all appeared to be, nice Seattle people, they thought he was a kind of a strange guy, and they didn't quite understand this real slick guy from Detroit who is a little cocky and a little,
But you write about it extensively in the book.
And I just want to add, one of my uncles that went to the trial said that in the closing, the judge said, "We're going to make an example out of you." So it was very,
including tilted. In prison, that probably factored in too.
Yeah. Two quick final questions. Time's my worst enemy, unfortunately, here. The song Fever. Fever is the title of the book, key part of the book title. When you go to YouTube, I mean, it's countless artists that have recorded that song in one form or another. Are you still fascinated to this day by the number of duplications, so to speak?
It's a wonderful.
And people give them credit. But I mean, it's Beyonce, it's Ella Fitzgerald, it's every generation.
And the song as he got it wasn't much. It was really what he put into that song that they're replicating.
Yeah.
It's a good song.
Yeah.
But I think he really presented it in a way that made it appealing to almost everybody.
Exactly.
Yes.
Final question. Why is it important for the viewers out there to know about this book? There's a zillion books written every year. Why should they pay attention to this?
Detroit music is still so important and influential, and people have to understand it didn't start in 1959 with Berry Gordy. That Berry Gordy actually tried to pitch songs to Willie. That there was this incredible music scene here, jazz, R&B, that fed into and helped create Motown. And these singers were world class. They went to New York. They influenced a generation of singers. And soul, Sam and Dave, all of that stuff they were all influenced by Willie John out of Detroit.
And I think if you love Stevie Wonder, if you love Marvin Gaye, you have to know about Little Willie John.
And Keith, you get the real quick final word.
Oh, well, I just wanted to add, I thought it was interesting that Stevie Wonder had said, I say Wonder because
I'm just kidding.
Don't just say Stevie. That Stevie Wonder said to me that when I hear Usher sing, which Usher is a very popular contemporary R&B pop, now dance, he can add that to his title, quite selling artist of this time. And Steve said, when you hear him do different things, I hear your dad in him. I hear that in a lot of artists from people that my father inspired. So it's a process.
All right, if you're interested, go out and get the book. you'll enjoy it. It's a fascinating story and good writing. And I commend all of you for doing it and for bringing it to us. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having
Thank you very
It's a
much.
pleasure seeing
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks,
Susan,
Jack.
thank you so much. Keith,
Thank you.
thank you so much.